Hey guys, so I just wanted to show you real quickly a simple exercise that you can use to help improve shoulder mobility really quick in just minutes. So before I get into the exercise, I want to explain real quick here kind of the purpose behind it, what it's doing and how it works. So just bear with me for a minute and this will make a lot more sense as to why I'm showing you this. So I'm trying to make a diagram here of the scapula. So here's the shoulder blade, and here's what I want to talk about with this. So we're trying to work with upward rotation because one of the biggest imbalances that I see with shoulder problems, with a lot of impingement syndromes, even with a lot of neck problems, is a dominance of the levator scapulae up here. So the levator scapula basically just works to elevate the shoulder blade, right, to lift it up. And then also, it could be in conjunction with the dominance of the upper trap. Now, I didn't draw the upper trap in there because, as you can see, this would get even a lot more messy than it already is. So, but what happens is when those two are dominant, then you get a couple things happening. One, the levator scapula, because it elevates the scapula. So if you're doing like overhead movement patterns, you can have a dominant or tight levator scapula that just all the time elevates that scapula. So what happens with if it's just elevation, and the upper trap, if it just participates with that elevation all the time, what happens is the middle and the lower trapezius, they can become inhibited and lose their ability to participate in the upward rotation of the scapula. So in normal scapulohumeral rhythm with that rotation, we'll see kind of all these guys working together. Now there's a lot of muscles that work at the shoulder, so this isn't written in stone that this is the only thing going on, but it's just to illustrate the point that I'm trying to make. What happens though, if these guys aren't doing their job, then these guys up top just basically take over, and a lot of problems can happen during overhead movement patterns. You might see this with some people where even during like exercise with overhead presses where they'll go real wide arc and they'll bunch up and the shoulders are jammed up. I mean, there's just nowhere else to move, right? And when you're doing things, lifting things overhead, and if you're shrugging that shoulder up and just elevating it all the time, then basically there's not enough room for the humerus to move, and you can impinge and get all sorts of problems. The other thing that can happen with a tight levator scapula is right up here. This is going up toward the attachment at the first four cervical vertebrae. So it attaches at the transverse process, and if it's tight, it can just pull and kind of pull everything together. So it decreases the space in where the nerves come out. It decreases that space and can cause problems as well as causing a whole host of other issues going on. So there's too many things. I don't want to take up too much time on the video with that. But that just kind of gives you an idea of what's happening. So what we want to do is to reestablish normal upward rotation is we want to reactivate the middle and the lower trapezius. Now, like I said, this exercise I'm going to show you, it can work in minutes, but it depends on what we're dealing with, right? So if there is a serious case here where the upper trap and the levator scapula are really just actually really tight or super strong, and the middle and lower trapezius are actually inhibited, they're so weak that you can't find it, they just can't be activated, then you're going to have to spend a little bit longer of a period of time, and it's going to depend on how fast you can get these guys to turn back on and then train them in that pattern. But there's another thing going on. So typically, somebody could exhibit weakness, like visibly it might look like they're weak. We've all seen the classic protracted shoulders and forward head posture. If we see someone stand like that, it's easy to assume that they're tight up top, the internal shoulder rotators are tight, the pec major's tight, we know all that, and that these mid-back muscles are weak, the mid-trap and lower trap. But it could just be something that they exhibit due to a lack of awareness. They might just have poor posture, but it might not mean that those muscles are actually weak. So, you sometimes can cue somebody like that cue them to, you know, retract the shoulder blades and everything, and you feel it, and they can turn the muscles on. So if you have that, if it's you or if it's somebody you're working with, a client that you're training, whatever, and they can activate these muscles on cue, that's why I say then this exercise will work really quick. You can just do it in minutes to improve shoulder mobility. So what I'm going to show you is a shrug. And if you think, well, God, you know, shrug, I mean, what's that going to do? Well, I'm going to put a little bit of a twist on it. So if we think about traditionally how shrugs are performed, think of like, you know, it's kind of like an old bodybuilding exercise. So I'll show you from the side. Typically we think of the exercise being performed with like a barbell in front of you. You're holding onto a barbell, you grab it from the front. We're doing, you know, shrugging this way. But if you watch this movement real quick, watch my shoulders real quick as I do this. So imagine I'm holding a bar in front of me, okay? So I grab the bar, and you see what my shoulders are doing? You see how now to grab a bar in front of you, you have to protract those shoulders quite a bit? And then what that's going to do, that protraction, along with that, there's going to be a little bit of a protraction, like a downward rotation. So what that does is it perpetuates the problem. The shoulder can't effectively upwardly rotate, and then, you know, there's not a lot of room for the humerus to move, so we just tend to perpetuate the problem. And on top of that, most people, you know, have the forward head and all that stuff going on, right? So instead of doing that, what we want to do is, instead of using a barbell, take a couple of dumbbells. And then what'll happen is, if you hold the dumbbells at your sides, so instead of being here, if I'm holding dumbbells, I can bring them to my sides, and now look what happens, right? I start to line up real straight. I have an open shoulder. I mean, I opened it up, and now I can retract my shoulder blades back, and I could start to activate that middle, and then I can get into the lower trapezius, right? So that's one big key, is just using those. Now I'm going to show you something else that, in addition, that you can do. But that's what we're after. So you want to make sure the head's in good alignment. You want to pull those shoulder blades back, and then keep those shoulder blades retracted and go through that shrug pattern, right? That's gonna initiate the upward rotation. But now upward rotation it only goes to about 30 degrees, even if you went out to like 90 degrees of humeral abduction. Okay, so right about to here, it's about 30 degrees of upward rotation. So if we want to get a little bit more, like the full 60 degrees that you'll get when you reach overhead, or closer to that, I should say, then what you can add in there is, in addition to the shrug, you can do a modified version of an upright row in there, where you're bringing the dumbbells up along your sides a little bit and bring the elbows up just a bit. Now we want to be careful with this, because if you go too far with it, you see how that could start to happen? You start to protrude with the head, and then you create all these problems again, right? So we want to make sure that we're retracting keeping the cervical spine lined up, right, chin tucked, and then pulling the shoulder blades together, and then as far as you can go while maintaining good alignment there, right? So you don't want to get into where you're going with the forward head, okay? So that's a simple way you can do it, and you don't want to do anything heavy with it. Again, all we're trying to do is get the upward rotation of the scapula. Now, if you think about a shrug, it's not really a functional movement pattern in terms of movement patterns that we use in our everyday life. But if you look at it, you want to look at it a little bit deeper. Rather than just the movement itself doing this, right? We want to look at it a little bit deeper in what the real purpose we're trying to use it for. And that is to recreate or reestablish proper upward rotation of the scapula. So then it becomes a more purposeful exercise to do, all right? So that is a way that you can help improve shoulder mobility in just minutes with a modified version of the shrug. All right, let me know how it works for you, and I'll talk to you soon.